Hello everybody, today we're ranking all of the Elden Ring bosses from S to F. Now that I've completed the game twice, I did my second playthrough and beat it a few days ago. So I have a pretty good grasp, I think, on which bosses I like, which ones I don't like so much. And I've fought just about all of them, at least definitely all the major ones, and most of the mini-bosses too. Pretty much all of them that are listed here. There's maybe one I don't remember. And this one is actually missing at least one. It's missing Crucible Knight and Misbegotten Warrior, but you know, that's not a big deal. And the reason I chose this list is actually just I like the presentation the most. I like that it actually has the names of the bosses. It actually is also missing the Erdtree Burial Gank fight. But yeah, it's got the names of the bosses over them, which I like a lot more than most of the lists. Most of the lists that are out right now only have the pictures, which I feel like some of them are really hard to make out what the heck they even are. So yeah, we'll just get started. Maybe I'll go in order, or I'll just kind of pick some people out and, you know, just see as I go along. Margaret the Fell Omen. Okay, pretty solid starting point. I'm actually going to put them in S because I feel like they do an excellent job at being an early game wall that sort of teaches the player, you know, how Elden Ring is going to be, the expectations. It's a good preparation for future bosses. Really solid early boss. Probably one of the best that FromSoft has ever put out. Really fucking cool boss. So that's S tier. Adon, Thief of Fire? The spell he casts at you is pretty threatening, but other than that, you're going to see a lot of bosses in this list go in the C tier, like the OK tier. They don't really do anything wrong, but they don't really do much that is especially appealing. A lot of the NPC fights are either going to go here or in D, meh. F is the only tier that is straight up like, I would rather these bosses not be in the game. Adon goes in C. Alabaster Lord, I feel like this is also the same as Onyx Lord, who I think is also in this list. These guys are okay. They're really easy though, but I like that they use gravity magic. They're appealing from that aspect, but just, you know, they get the job done. They're just pretty average mini bosses. Nothing much to say there. I'm trying to find Onyx Lord so I can put them in the same category. Deathbird and Deathrite Bird pose a decent challenge, especially the Deathrite Bird. Like, good god, this thing murked me when I was in Caelid in my first playthrough. I really like the fire magic it has going on. I like the weak point on the head that takes some effort to get to. Overall, pretty like, this is like above average level of mini boss. I didn't mind seeing this guy a couple times, or I think 3 times, because they also show up in Mountaintops of the Giants. But by then I learned how to fight him, and I destroyed him. Astel, Natural Born of the Void. I'll put these two together. So these guys, they go in B. The reason they stop here, despite the spectacle being really cool, I feel like they're kind of spammy. You know, they kind of fall victim a little bit to just spamming AoEs. They also warp around in a way that can be kind of obnoxious. They tend to run away from you a lot in a huge arena. The thing that actually saves them from being lower is that, just like Deathrite Bird, they have a really juicy head weak point, so they avoid being a sponge and running away from you, which is a problem that one particular boss really has, and that plummets them. Astel avoids this. Astel is really cool. Not the best fight, but avoids being like average. It's at least above average, because at least once you do catch up to it, the head is a juicy weak point. It's a dangerous high risk, high reward weak point. So I like that part of its design, and it's really cool. When you go into that arena, you're just like, oh my god, what have I gotten myself into? Solid B tier. Oh, Malakith the Black Blade. Yes, he has to be S. This is one of the bosses that people kind of complain about, like with the end game. It's like, oh, he does too much damage. It's bullshit. I can't dodge this. Nah, Malakith is cool. He's a boss that, unlike a lot of Soulsborne, especially previous Soulsborne bosses, he definitely emphasizes good positioning as opposed to just iframing through everything. Like, he says, no, you cannot just get your opening for free by dodging in front of me. You have to get behind me or the AoEs are going to hit you. More of a Monster Hunter kind of fight in that way. And I really liked that because It avoids the whole meme about Soulsborne being just a rhythm game where you press dodge whenever an attack is coming. Malakith punishes you for that big time. I actually wish the whole fight was Malakith, because I almost feel like Beast's Clergyman, he's really not as good. I actually feel like Beast Clergyman almost drags him down to A. Because Beast Clergyman, he's kind of, in Monster Hunter, you would refer to him as a Kelby fight. He just hops around outside of your range a lot. He's fast in a way that's... Oh, what happened to my Google Chrome? The fuck? There we go. Now we're back. That was really weird. As I was saying, Beast Clergyman, the first phase, hops around and avoids you in a way that's kind of annoying. He's fast in an obnoxious way, not a good way. He's not the worst fight still, but he's definitely what you would call a Kelby fight. Kelby and Monster Hunter are like these deer creatures that just are kind of hard to hit because of how they hop around frequently and quickly. He's not hard. He's just obnoxious, and I wish Malakith was the entire fight, because oddly enough, I found Malakith to be the better designed one of the two, despite being harder and stronger. But Malakith is so fucking cool. I'm gonna keep him in S anyway. Let's see. Eleanor of the Brier. This is our first, like, A. Solid A. I like his gimmick with the greatsword, where he actually has range with the greatsword. Just all around solid boss. He doesn't really let himself get bullied. Especially, like, the Bell-Bearing Hunter can be a bit of an early game wall, but I don't think he's badly designed at all. Just a really solid, like, he kind of teeters on being like a boss, but he's also kind of a mini boss. I like him quite a bit, actually. Ancient Hero of Zamor. He's either C, like top of C, or B. I'll stick him in B for now. I feel like he gets the job done as a mini boss, you know. I like his ice attacks. I like that he's kind of fast, but almost has... He kind of reminds me of the Irithyll Knights in Dark Souls 3, and those are really cool enemies, so, you know, Ancient Hero Zamor, I feel like it's like a lower B, but still kind of solid. Not the hardest or the most memorable, but he's not bad, you know. He's not like Adon, who's just kind of a joke, but has like one cool spell that keeps him in C. He's okay. Alecto. Alecto was kind of a shock. This is actually, I'm putting Ancient Hero in C because Alecto is like an example of a mini boss reskin that kind of goes above and beyond, and is actually very threatening and very aggressive. Yeah, definitely threw me off guard how strong Alecto was. But I guess it makes sense with her lore. Who else? Okay, I ranked Morgot. I'm gonna rank Morgot now. Morgot's a solid A. I feel like Morgot definitely upstages him because Morgot has more impact as the first like real boss. And Morgot is in this really strange part of the game where you're probably outscaling a lot of stuff. And even though Morgot has really cool design and really cool attacks, I feel like you can probably just steamroll him with your stats and levels, which is why he's not an S tier, despite being like an upgraded version of Morgot. I'm gonna rank the other dragons before I get to Placidusax. I feel like I go crazy every time I discuss the Fire Giant online, because I feel like everybody fucking hates this guy, and I'm just like, what? The Fire Giant was actually pretty cool. For being like a huge, colossal boss fight, he definitely could have been clunkier or less engaging, but I feel like From Software pulled off the Colossus fight very decently with the Fire Giant. You know, I didn't really expect, like, I heard of a boss that was a story boss that was named just Fire Giant. It sounded really, like, simple and generic. I did not expect anything from this boss. And he was actually pretty fucking cool. I don't know. I think he's a solid B tier. He is definitely, like, still clunky and kind of a sponge. There's annoying aspects of him that keep him out of A, but for what he is, I felt like FromSoft did a really good job with the Fire Giant. I don't know why everybody dislikes him. I feel like I'm going crazy where I'm just like, what? Fire Giant was solid. What are you talking about? Okay, we've got our first stinker. Godskin Duo, F tier. I don't know what they were thinking. Actually, I kind of do know what they were thinking. They were thinking, we don't gotta put effort into this gang. They'll just use Ash Spirit summons anyway. That's why we put them in the game. And it's a shame because individually, these two bosses are really good. Great, even. I'm going to put Godskin Noble and Godskin Apostle in A tier. And it's a real shame that they're going to be remembered for this dogshit gank fight. They just do not complement each other at all. They look like Ornstein and Smo. They are not Ornstein and Smo. They are both fast, aggressive, they stay within each other's range, so it's hard to split them up. They're good at short range, they're good at long range. It's just like, how the fuck are you supposed to fight these guys at the same time? I don't get it. And the absolute cruelty of having to fight 4 of them with a shared health bar. What the fuck? What the fuck was this fight? And you know, sometimes it's not even hard, because sometimes you just outscale them very hard. That's what I found in both of my playthroughs. But just because they were easy for me does not mean they're not bad design. I don't know what was up with this decision for the boss fight. Because like, imagine splitting up Ornstein and Smo. They don't work individually. They work because they're together. Imagine like Smo by himself as a boss fight. He would just basically be the Asylum Demon. So when you have these two enemies that individually are complete bosses that work individually, and then you put them together, how the fuck are you supposed to fight that? No, horrible boss. One of the few bosses that are going to be in this F tier that I'm just like, what? Soldier of Godric, I get that he's a tutorial tool. Actually, you know what? I'm not even going to rank Soldier of Godric. I'm not going to count him because I don't think it's as fair to count a tutorial tool, a very clear, like, intentional tutorial joke boss against the game. So rather than put him in F like I was originally going to, I'm just not going to rank Soldier of Godric. He's basically just a glorified tutorial, so that putting him in F would be like implying that this is something that counts against the game, but it really doesn't. Soldier of Godric just doesn't matter. Bloodhound Knight Darwil, he's C. He's kind of like Adon and Zamor. Just kind of an okay, you know, he gets the job done kind of mini boss. And I'll just be going through, I'm not going to spend too much time discussing a lot of the C tier like mini bosses in the game. Clean Rot Knights, this one's tough because I feel like he shows up as a random like generic enemy too soon relative to the boss fight. And I know one of them is individual, but the one I remember is a gank in a really, like, one of the more annoying catacombs. Goes in D for me. I feel like they show up way too early as a generic enemy because you can find them in Caelid in the swamp, but then they're also a boss in Caelid. I don't know, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Leonine Misbegotten, solid as an early game boss. I always manage to get to him really over leveled, but I don't think it's a D though. Leonine gets C. I could see him being like an okay boss if you get to him early. Oh, I found Onyx Lord. Okay, he goes here. Melania, Goddess of Rot. This one's going to be controversial. I think she's S tier. I actually really like the dance of this boss fight once you learn it. And I can forgive how unforgiving and punishing and brutal her fight is with the fact that, you know, she's supposed to be the super boss. She's the ultimate challenge of the game, even beyond the final boss. At least that's how I see it. So, you know, she's supposed to be hard. Although I do feel like the only thing that kind of brings her down a little bit, kind of like Malakith's first phase, is that the learning curve on her super attack, her anime like slash move, her judgment slash, I feel like the learning curve is too steep. Like, it's not intuitive how you're supposed to dodge that attack. The only thing that's good about it, I think, is like that it punishes panic rolling. Like, I get the idea behind it, but I feel like it should have been more obvious how you dodge it in terms of like running away and then dodging in. Like, I don't know how you're supposed to figure that out on your own. That's the only thing. But once you get that down, the rest of the fight is fun. A lot of people don't like the fact that she heals. I actually think this is a good thing within the context of Elden Ring, where you are going to outscale a lot of fights in the mid game. Melania teaches you cannot trade with me. Doesn't matter how high your stats are, unless they're just like ridiculous. It doesn't matter how high your level is. You have to engage with my fight and learn my moveset. If you try to trade with me, you're going to lose every time. So I think the healing factor was necessary from that perspective. Because realistically, all of her moves are perfectly dodgeable, with the exception of the Judgment Slash, which is more of a learning curve. But once you get that one down, then you shouldn't have much of an issue. The second phase has a really neat like incentive to use bows and ranged attacks with the flower AoE, where it's like, hey, is your build complete with a sidearm that is ranged? Like if you're a dexterity or strength build, maybe have a bow on the side so that you can punish that. Yeah, overall, I think this is one of the most fun fights in the game, even if it is one of the most brutal. Oh yeah, let's talk about Mog Lord of Blood. This is another S tier fight. Initially in my first playthrough, I did not think much of Mog because he was one of the last bosses I fought in my first playthrough. And I had the Crystal Tear that basically trivialized his whole like second phase transition gimmick. So I didn't get to see a whole lot of what he could do in the second phase. And so I was going to rate him more like down here. But in the second playthrough, I did not get the Crystal Tear, and I fought him about as early as you could. And holy shit, he popped off. That second phase is crazy. He's flying around, doing crazy combos, followed up by like AoEs where you usually have an opening, but you gotta position yourself differently. Fire everywhere, blood, fire, chaos. Just a really tense fight. Honest to God, I died more to this guy in my second playthrough than Malenia. No joke. That being said, Mog the Omen, where I just saw him, I'll rate him more around where I was going to rate Lord of Blood initially, because the first time I fought Lord of Blood, I basically only saw the first phase, which is this fight. So that one's just more of a B. But Lord of Blood I think is really cool. Usually I would be against the sort of design of like unavoidable damage, but one, there is a way around it with the Crystal Tear. But even if you don't have it, it doesn't become impossible. It just drains you of your resources and makes the second phase more tense, and incentivizes you to learn the first phase to perfection, so that you have as many resources as possible. I don't know, I felt like it was kind of cute and creative in this case, especially since he doesn't like chain into anything else. He's completely inactive while he drains your health. It would be functionally the same as deleting 3 of your Estus flasks. Pretty much the same thing. Beastman of Fair Missoula, kind of like Leonine Misbegotten, only good because it's an early one, and also doesn't become a common enemy too quickly. Magma Worm, I'm gonna be real with you guys, I don't really dig these guys too much. They're just really obnoxious, they're slow, they kind of feel like Dark Souls 1 bosses, which is a shame because I like how they look. But a lot of their stuff is just either obnoxious or not that engaging. I think these two are the same, so I'll put them in D. Yeah, just not my style. Grafted Scion. This was a boss? Oh, right. Yeah, he's the first boss. I don't know how to rate this guy because by the time you find him in the 4 belfries, he's really weak. And he's also just sort of a generic enemy and also one of the more obnoxious ones. I feel like, I don't know, I'll put him in D. Like, he kind of just fails as a tutorial boss because he doesn't teach you anything. He just teaches you how to die. Like, I don't know. Yeah, you're sooner going to find this guy as a normal enemy in Stormvale than the actual boss, Grafted Scion. So he goes in D. Necromancer Garrus, another D tier. You know, just kind of a... He's an NPC that is far less threatening than Adon, so goes in D tier. Radagon of the Golden Order, S tier fight. This should have been the only final boss, because Elden Beast? Where is he? Where are he at? Where's Elden Beast? He's kind of whack. Elden Beast is like Astel, but infinitely more obnoxious. His health pool is a complete sponge, and that's not helped by the fact that you have to fight Radagon and Elden Beast back to back. It's like From Software took a look at this and said, haha, how can we make this battle of attrition as obnoxious as possible? Swims away from you all the fucking time, is the worst boss when it comes to AoE spam. It's like a big orb and a bunch of little smaller orbs that pelt you. How are you supposed to avoid damage from that? And the worst part is that he can still like chain other attacks into that one. So you'll be avoiding the orb and the little orbs, And he can also do other AoEs on top of that. Like, how is that fair? If they had just removed one of the more annoying aspects, it's like an unholy trifecta of bad design decisions. And you could have taken out just one of them, and this would have been like a C or a B, even. Maybe not a B, more like a here. It wouldn't be F if it didn't have one of those three things. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice. Big health, just runs away from you all the time, and has stupid AoEs. If it just had two of them, I would be like, okay, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. But it has all three of them, and it just culminates into this just bad boss. Radagon should have been the only final boss. Elden Beast is pretty whack. And it's sad to say that because there's a cool fight underneath all of this. Like, he's not an inherently bad concept like the Godskin duo is, or like this one is. We'll put this one here now. I'll talk about the Crucible Knight in a bit, but these two are just bad at a concept level. And Elden Beast could have been good. Like, I actually predict that there's going to be some sort of patch for him. Maybe like an AI patch where he doesn't run away from you as much, because it's ridiculous how much he does it. Then he'd be more like a C, you know? Just with that change alone. Lower his health and make his AI less of a bitch, and he's a better boss instantly. But the way he is now, he's whack. At least Astel has that, like, Astel also does crazy AoEs and also runs away from you a lot, but he's not a sponge. That's the difference. He doesn't feel like a slog because the pace is kept up. And Elden Beast just doesn't fucking die, no matter how much you hit it. And also you have to fight Radagon every time you die to this thing to sap your resources. Radagon's actually cool. So yeah, Elden Beast goes in F. Ancestor Spirit. Both of these, they go in C. You could see an argument for D because they just kind of don't do much, but I feel like the atmosphere and aesthetic of the boss fight definitely saves it, along with the fact that it's one of the more unique mini-bosses, only being reused once. Yeah, they're cool. They're okay. They're not tough, but they don't, like, the bosses don't necessarily have to be tough to be fun, you know. The Ancestor Spirits, they make up for it in other ways. They're solid. They're just about average. Now, Tibia Mariner. This is a boss that is so trivial that it actually goes in F. Like, what does Tibia Mariner even do? There is one that summons, like, big skeletons, but Tibia Mariner itself is never the threat. I think D is more appropriate. Because I actually do like the way the boss looks. I like the concept of just like a skeleton, like kind of like a Charon from Greek mythology. A boss with that concept. I think that's cool, but Tibia Mariner is just a joke boss. At least Regal Ancestor Spirit can reasonably kill you on its own, maybe. Tibia Mariner, it's like it summons other skeletons to not do what it does because they're not that aggressive. Like, there's just an overall lack of any danger during the fight, but it is a cool concept, so I give it D. I don't think it's quite as bad as any of these guys. I wouldn't like to see Tibia Mariner removed from the game, more like just improved as well. Loretta and Royal Knight Loretta, these are just the same boss. A tier. I actually think they're the best iteration of the Royal Sentinel like model. Pretty cool like boss, you know, keeps you on your toes. Satisfying level of difficulty. He's not too hard. She's not too hard, but also not too easy. Yeah, just cool boss all around. Oh, we got another S tier boss. So this one, it speaks for itself. One of the only threatening bosses in the mid game. Doesn't matter how high your stats are. Patch is gonna give you a rough time. He's gonna really give you a run for your money. Pretty obvious S tier in my opinion. Roon Bear. I never actually fought the boss version of Roon Bear, but I fought a lot of like the generic ones that are definitely stronger because Roon Bear is a boss in the peninsula, the Weeping Peninsula or something like that, and I definitely fought ones that were stronger statistically than the boss version. So I do feel comfortable ranking it, and is it a C? Is it a D? I feel like Roon Bear is just way too random and spastic for its size as well. Like, the wind-up of some of its attacks is like, how was I supposed to react to this? Yeah, not my style. Not the worst in D tier, so it's at the top, but just not that fun to fight, even if he is challenging. Red Wolf of Radagon. This one's a little tough. I'm going to put him in B with an asterisk. The one in Raya Lucaria specifically is B, because I feel like they balance the health pool well with how fast he is and how few openings he has. From that perspective, it's fine. But there's a few stronger ones. Excuse me. Losing my voice. There's a couple stronger ones that are generics in the world that are really annoying because they are a lot tankier than the boss one. And I feel like that doesn't mesh well with how fast and unforgiving and unrelenting they are. But it's a cool concept. I like, the idea of like Sif that uses magic. Okay, I'm down for that. And the one in Raya Lucaria is the most balanced one out of the three that exist. Especially the one in Ronnie's like last area. That one is a bitch. Like, I didn't feel like satisfied with that win because I basically was just chugging in front of it and hitting it. Because it was so fast, but at the same time I needed to deal so much damage. The one in Raya Lucaria felt just right, so B tier. Cemetery Shade, I don't remember this one too much. I know there's a few, and one of them is a gank, but I think C. The first one probably comes early enough to where it kind of like falls into the same tier as Beastman and Leonine Misbegotten, where it's just, early game mini boss, it gets the job done. Putting him in C. Draconic Tree Sentinel. To me, is kind of just a less satisfying, less balanced version of Loretta. Still not bad, but a little bit too... actually, no, hold on. The Horse Breathes Fire. A tier. Not as good as Loretta, but not bad either. Pretty decent, like... Excuse me. The only thing with Draconic Tree Sentinel is that, at least to me, he's a lot more threatening than either of the Langdale bosses. Like Spirit Godfrey, also an A. But it's just kind of weird, like with the balancing, that Draconic Tree Sentinel is more threatening than either of these two guys that come directly after him. So that's maybe why I was going to put him in B, because he's a little spammy, and he does a lot of damage. Some would say too much damage, but he's not... I don't think he's on the same level as Red Wolf of Radagon or like Alecto. I think he's a step above that, so I'm going to be generous and put Draconic in A. The thing keeping Godfrey from S, even though like you would think like, oh, Godfrey Shade is an A, so actual Godfrey is going to be an S, right? He almost gets there. I feel like Horalu is a little too spammy with the AoEs, especially the one that is like a flashing, like the one with where the ground flashes and he like lifts it all up. I feel like you're intended to jump that to avoid it, but you can't because the hitbox is too high. It's just kind of a janky attack, especially when the other AoEs are a lot better. Like the ones he does in his first phase, you can very clearly jump over, but then the last one where it's glowing, you can't, and you have to dodge it, but the iframes are really tight because it has a lot of active frames, so he just kind of tends to have some janky AoEs that he spams a little bit too much. Otherwise, he's a good fight. A tier for both of the Godfreys. Falling Star Beast. Okay, so this one's a little interesting. Full Grown goes in D. Normal goes in F. Because fighting him in those mines in that tiny ass arena is bullshit. At least Full Grown gets the big meteor arena and you get to use Torrent. So that one's a bit better, but still not too appealing. I don't even like the visual design of these guys. They just suck. Again, these guys kind of feel like Dark Souls 1 bosses in terms of how janky and simple they can be. Kind of like Magma Worm. Yeah, I don't dig them. Omen Killer. C. Doesn't do anything bad, but isn't spectacular. Perfumer Trisha and Misbegotten. One of the better gank fights, just because the range is so much different. I didn't mind this one at all. This one's fine. Reichard, Lord of Blasphemy. They finally got a gimmick weapon boss fight right. Because Reichard is a lot more threatening than Yorm. So it makes up for the fact that you kind of get a cheat code weapon to do a lot of damage to him, but he keeps up the aggression and the danger level. So really cool fight, both from a design perspective and a spectacle perspective. Solid ass A tier. Godric, another like really cool early game test. Really balanced moveset, really fun fight. And Godfroy, I know it was a little controversial that they reused this boss, but Godfroy goes in A as well, simply because Godric's first phase I find is harder than the second phase, and Godfroy never goes out of the first phase. So it just seems appropriate that they go in the same tier. Solid A tier fights. Valiant Gargoyles. Okay. This one's weird, because I was going to put D, but then I noticed that they actually have sort of the same AI pattern as the Demon Princes in Dark Souls 3, where one of them is more aggressive for a period of time, while the other one is more passive and spits toxic at you, and then they alternate. So from that perspective, it's one of the better gank fights, but the Demon Princes had like visual indicators to tell you which one was aggro and which one was going to lay back and be chill. And the Valiant Gargoyles failed to replicate that, so if they're C, they're like the bottom of C. They're not terrible, but they're not quite there yet, you know? And they're also like really clunky to fight compared to the Demon Princes, which were low to the ground, like their heads were low to the ground, even though they were really big. And you were really just fighting them like face to face, whereas with the Valiant Gargoyles, you're kind of like between their ankles a lot of the times, and they feel really clunky to fight, especially when there's two of them. Even if the gank AI is actually tuned kind of well, they border on being D, but they're not quite that bad. Knox Duo is another one that I feel like is one of the better balanced gank fights in terms of like splitting them up and like their individual ranges. Like one of them kind of fights you more up close, the other one kind of pelts at you from afar with longer range weapons. So not the worst gank fight. Their HP is also pretty low, so it's not that difficult to get them out of the way. Royal Revenant, this was a boss fight? I thought this was just a generic enemy. Either way, I think he kind of just goes with Grafted... excuse me, shit. Goes in D tier, because as a generic enemy, these guys are annoying as shit. Just do not like. Scaly Misbegotten goes in D, because I feel like he becomes a normal enemy too quickly compared to Leonine. So, for that reason, goes in D. Erdtree Avatar goes in C. Could make an argument for B, but he kind of just is like a repurposed Asylum Demon that's a bit better. But I feel like they show up way too much. At least if they were only at the Erdtrees, they would feel consistent. Like you would know what you're getting into. Oh, I'm nearing a minor Erdtree. That means I'm going to be running into one of these guys. That doesn't feel as bad. But the minute you start throwing them at us as like generic enemies in the Halictree, that's where I'm like, I don't know if I wanted to see them there, especially when I don't have Torrent with me. This definitely feels like a fight that's designed to have Torrent with you, especially with the holy attacks that it does. But it's not bad though. It's not bad. It's a C tier. It's okay. The Dragonkin Soldiers I did not dig that much. I feel like they're really awkward to fight, and screw whoever decided to put them in the Lake of Rot. Just horrible decision. I don't know if it's intentional or not, but when you actually like get under them, you miss a lot of the attacks like in the middle. Like there's no hitbox there. You have to sort of like hit at their knees. Yeah, they're just kind of awkward to fight. Wasn't a big fan of these guys. Battlemage Hughes. You know, another like NPC fight that's not really too threatening. Yeah, I think I'm gonna stick with that. I don't know if I'd even call Bois a boss fight because he doesn't have a boss meter. He just shows up in the middle of Raya Lucaria, but he can parry you, so that's kind of cute. I'll put him with Adon in C, maybe like lower C. Commander O'Neill is actually pretty fun. I like his gimmick of you know, summoning soldiers and buffing them, and I feel like it's balanced well in the fact that when the soldiers are out, he's not quite as active. So he's not a hard fight, but he's pretty decent. Now Niall, on the other hand, he's still B, but I feel like he's balanced a little worse because he starts with his gank already active, but he's also really active while they're out. And he's also really strong on his own, unlike O'Neil. So, I don't know, I feel like you just didn't need the gank to make this fight work. If Niall was just by himself, he would be better for it. Because he kind of abandons the gimmick of O'Neil. He doesn't summon soldiers himself. He just starts with two of them, and then that's it. And then his moveset is almost completely different, and he's a lot stronger on his own. I almost feel like his lightning attack is actually cool, you know. I don't mind that one. It's supposed to be strong. Once you learn the timing, you can dodge it pretty easily. But the frost AoEs, I think, are a little on the obnoxious side. So that keeps him from going into A. If his AoEs with like the ice damage, where if they had less active frames and he was by himself, I think he would actually make A. But as he is, he goes in B. So I don't really get the hype with like Crucible Knight being bad. I actually think he's a really solid mini boss when he's by himself. I feel like he's supposed to be the parry learning tool, because unlike a lot of the bosses that are tougher in his area, like the Bell-Bearing Hunter and Morgot, he actually staggers from one parry, unlike these two. But he doesn't stagger, and that's the trade-off. So he incentivizes you to learn parrying. And even if you don't parry, I think he's just fine. You know, I never got the hate for Crucible Knight. That is the one with the shield. The Lance Crucible Knight, I feel isn't as impactful, both because she comes later and also just that she cannot really stop you from spamming R1 or jump attacks. You know, I fought one of these at the Capitol and I could not tell they were a Crucible Knight. I just kind of thought, why is this generic knight not flinching? Oh well, and then I killed her. So Shield Crucible Knight definitely superior to Spear Crucible Knight. They should definitely not be together though. Definitely not. Wormface, C, for the fact that it's a nice subversion to not fight an Erdtree avatar at one of the Erdtrees. Plus he's kind of cute. He's just kind of silly. He's like a silly little mini boss. Actually kind of mildly threatening. I don't mind Wormface. He's fine. Star Scourge Radon. I was looking for this guy. He might actually be the best boss in the game. I don't care what anybody says. The spectacle of it, the fight itself, all of it is so fucking cool. Even pre-nerf, I thought he was perfectly manageable, but I trust FromSoft enough to say, you know, if something needed adjusted, then that's perfectly okay. The hitboxes, I didn't notice anything myself when fighting him pre-patch, but if they needed to be adjusted on some stuff, okay, so be it. The damage nerf is not a big deal either. 10% is not likely to make any 2 shots into 3 shots. At least not that many of them. But just the fight itself, I find one of the most engaging, excuse me, and one of the most fun. I really do like the fact that you kind of get to pick your difficulty option. He's still a fun fight if you summon, and I really like the epic setup of it all, the festival, just charging in with all your NPC bros, that's really cool. But he's also fun when fought solo. He doesn't feel unmanageable solo. He might actually be my favorite fight in the entire game. Putrid Avatar. Isn't this just... Oh, this is Erdtree Avatar. Okay, it's the same thing. Same thing. Guardian Golem. This was a boss? This is just kind of a generic enemy, isn't it? D tier. Kindred of Rot goes in F tier because... At least with stuff like Guardian Golem, you know, by the time you face this thing, it could be rare to find them as normal enemies. But Kindred of Rot is like, what? Why are these two a boss? Like, you've probably faced dozens of these as normal enemies way before you get to this dungeon. So, I don't know about this one. Like, Kindred of Rot, you're more likely to be, like, you're probably going to run into this after running into the Clean Rot boss. Where is he? Right here. And they're unequivocally like, this is basically like an upgraded version of this, but you find this one later. I don't get it. Tree Sentinel, A tier. I feel like he does a good job of being like a tutorial kick your shit in kind of boss. teaches you to go explore, and just a really solid enemy by himself. The gang fight, not so much. Gang fight would probably go in D if it was listed, but Tree Sentinel by himself, solid ass A tier. Black Knife Assassin, okay. So there's a lot of these and they're different. The one that's invisible, I don't really dig that gimmick. I think it's kind of annoying. It's sort of hard to like judge where they are, even with the footsteps being shown. I don't feel like that one was play tested enough. And then the regular Black Knife Assassins are just joke fights. Pretty much Black Knife Alecto is like the only good one of these. But like the ones that don't go invisible, they're easier, but they're also not as frustrating, so they could warrant C. But the invisible ones suck to fight, so they go in D. Black Blade Kindred, B tier. You know, when it's just one of them, they're not so bad. They incentivize mixing up combat with Torrent. Yeah, they're fine. Pretty threatening. And their attacks are more interesting than the Valiant Gargoyles, who just kind of spit poison, whereas these ones have like cool like Malakith-ish attacks. And I just prefer to fight one of them over two, so they squeeze by into B. Fell Twins, okay. Again, a gang fight that's not so bad because the second one is really inactive while you fight the first one, but they become generic enemies pretty soon after you fight them. However, I like the stage. I like the gimmick where, you know, you walk in, you're making your way to the Divine Tower, and then everything goes dark, and you see these two guys. Kind of a fresh surprise from the usual mini bosses, so they squeak by and see. They're okay. Mimic tier, I like the concept. He's really easy, but I thought it was pretty funny. Mimic tier is a C. Renalla of the Full Moon. Probably the weakest of the major like Shardbearer bosses, just because she's not really that hard. Her first phase is really not that dangerous. And then the second phase, she's a glass cannon. She definitely can kill you, but I find it's a little too easy to just avoid her summons and then take advantage of her AI that's less aggressive during the gank and just, you know, you just melt her then. But still good. Still a good boss fight. Not as strong as the others like up here, but solid B tier, probably around where the fire giant is. I like Renalla. Elder Dragon Grail. Okay, at first I thought they were talking about Grail. Where is he? This one? No. This is the big, like, dying dragon that's guarded by a bunch of, like, generic Agiles. This is not a boss. I'm not ranking it. Erdtree Burial. It's a good early game boss. A cool design. Cool, unique design. C it is. Maybe even B. I kind of like this thing, actually. But because it has a gank fight later on... But hold on. The gank fight, one of them is long range. And the other one is like up close, so it's not even that bad. I'm keeping him in C to be safe. But like top of C. Sir Gideon, definitely the best of the NPC fights, but just not that threatening, even though like he's kind of just the definition of a glass cannon, but you really can just stagger him to death. Gideon's a C. Demi-Human Queen, I at least like the design enough to make it a C, but she's not really that threatening, except for like the intimidation factor. Like if you've never fought her before, you see this thing, you're just like, oh, what have I done? Demi-Human Chiefs is more like a... yeah, it's like a D. They're just overgrown generic enemies that is kind of like a gank, but you fight the first one a lot closer. It's kind of weird. I don't know. And then you fight like a bunch of little minions around them. Not the most compelling fight. Stone Digger Troll. It's like a D. It's kind of just a reskin generic that is more annoying because it bounces off a lot of your attacks. Although, nah, his attacks are a lot more threatening than the generic trolls. But I don't know, that's not enough for C. Yeah, it's not. Grave Warden Duelist, I believe there's a few variations of this guy, and one of them also has like a Perfumer or like a Mage with them as a gank fight. They're okay. As an early game challenge, they're not bad. Or not early game challenge, but early game mini boss, they get the job done. Even if they show up as a generic, it's way later. I think Frenzied Duelist is the same thing, so I'm putting them together. Fierce Champions are a joke. They're going in, I don't know if they're going in F, maybe, but I don't know why these even needed to be a thing. Maybe they make sense lore-wise, I don't know. I guess I do like that some of the NPCs you'll recognize, like Leonard and Rogier, probably. So that's the only like interesting thing about them. They'll go in D. Ulcerated Tree Spirit. I kind of like these things as a mini boss. I like that they drop golden seeds. They're really erratic, but in a way that's kind of satisfying to dodge. One of the few bosses that are good with or without torrent access. Yeah, they're just kind of cool. Like they definitely give you like an oh shit kind of moment when they show up. However, where is the Putrid Tree Spirit? Okay, these guys are going in D for one reason and one reason only. In order to make them spawn, you have to like bait them and put yourself in a position to be hit. And that's really obnoxious with the fact that they are usually in pools of Scarlet Rot or Crimson Rot. Wait, is it? Yeah, it's Scarlet Rot. So I think the environment you fight these guys is a lot more unfair than the normal tree spirits. So yeah, they're a lot more annoying. The way they pop up is like setting you up to get hit. The normal tree spirits, they're fine. These guys suck. Like the two of them, just like the outside circumstances of how you fight these guys and where, and how you get them to show up, it actually plummets them down 2 tiers compared to the normal tree spirits, who I think are fine. Yeah, just screw Scarlet Rot in general. Knights Cavalry, yeah, definitely the least compelling of the Tree Sentinel models, but not bad by any means. Low B tier, along with Ulcerated Tree Spirit. They're fine, they're okay. I like that they're just like roaming around at night. You know, as an overworld boss, I like them. Esgar, Priest of Blood, I don't know about this one. Just like another NPC fight that's not really that threatening. So, put them in D actually, yeah. And actually, Putrid, nah, I'm keeping Putrid Tree Spirit in D. I was gonna say maybe it's unfair to have these two so separated, but I stand by this. Spirit Color Snail is kind of weird because in reality it's just like fighting Godskin Apostle and Godskin Noble back to back, which is nowhere near as bad as fighting them as a duo, like as a gank fight. But I think it just warrants a C. Nothing too special. Sanguine Noble, basically just Priest of Blood all over again. So D tier. And actually, on further thought, I'm gonna put Dragon Soldier of Knox Duo a tier above the normal ones because at least these guys have a bit of variety. I forgot that the Knox Duo Dragonkin is different in that it actually has like lightning attacks, which I think is pretty cool and definitely better than the normal Dragonkin Soldiers that are a little bit more dull. So they squeak by into C tier. Like I probably wouldn't be able to justify having Dragonkin like a tier below Wormface and Demi-Human Queen, so it definitely does enough for C tier. Mad Pumpkinhead, I don't know. I feel like these guys become generic enemies way too quickly compared to when they're a boss fight, but I don't think I actually ever found just the individual Pumpkinhead. I found the gank fight. So maybe you can find it really early on, and I do think it's pretty cute that they take less damage on the head because of the big old helmet. That's kind of fun. So I'll put them in C tier. Putrid Grave Warden, basically the same as Grave Warden, put them in C. Okay, so the next one is kind of tricky. All of the Dragon Aguil reskins. Okay, it's weird because some of them are B tier for me and some of them are top of C. And it's a little bit complicated to explain why, because they're all very similar. And that's one of the things I'm going to kind of knock a few of them for, is that they're very repetitive. FromSoft was really counting on the appeal of a dragon fight in a fantasy game, holding through 6 boss fights. And don't get me wrong, Agheel is fine. Reskinning Agheel is also fine, okay. But it does get old after the 5th or 6th time. And a few of them are slightly better than the others, and vice versa. There's a few that don't quite really do it for me compared to others. So here's what we're going to do. Grail, Adula, and Exyx, or whatever you pronounce that as, they're B tier. While Agheel, Smaragd, and Borealis are C. Okay, let me explain why one by one. Grail I'm biased toward because he was the first one that I found, and he's a lot more threatening than Agheel. Like, when you find him, you're liable to get one shot, which demands perfection from the actually pretty simple moveset, so it's actually reasonable to do it even if you get one shot. He conveys the threat of a dragon the most out of all of the reskins of Agheel. Plus, he takes place on a bridge, and that's just the coolest shit to me. I think I've had a fetish for horse fights on a bridge in fantasy games ever since Twilight Princess, and that one fight with the dude on the board. That was you can't tell me that wasn't the coolest shit in 2006. And Grail is pretty similar to that. He reminded me of that, dragon fight on horseback on a bridge. That's just cool as shit. Adula makes it in B barely, just because of that really cool Moonlight Greatsword attack it does, where it's actually kind of like Sif. It has it in its mouth and it just rams down at you. That's a really cool attack and enough to squeak into B tier. And the Scarlet Rot one, despite the fact that I was pretty salty about Scarlet Rot with the Putrid Tree Spirit, I actually think I can't pronounce this name. Exyx uses it pretty intelligently, where like it punishes you for just slashing at his ankles by stomping, and then it's like a Scarlet Rot aura around the ankle, so it's like, no, you have to attack my head. And just in general, I feel like his visual design is a lot more distinct and interesting out of all of the reskins of this boss. So these 3 are B tier, while the other 3, like Borealis is cool, I guess, but by the time you find Borealis, you're kind of getting sick of this boss. Smaragd is very dull, in my opinion. He's just Agheel, but he fires soul arrows, and I did not need to have 3 of these guys as generics on the plateau where you fight Adula as well. Didn't need that. And then Agheel is just the weakest one, that is the least threatening. He's just kind of the baseline. He's fine, he's okay, but just kind of an inferior version of Grail. So that's where they stand. They're pretty close together, but a few of these go a little bit more. They have just a little bit more oomph, these 3 right here. Ancient Dragon Lanciax and Fortisax, they go in B tier. These guys are really cool. I find their visual design a lot more appealing than the Agheel type dragons, but they have one thing like holding them back, and I feel like you go too unpunished for just sort of whacking at their ankles. And it's kind of weird because they have this thing where like they do take extra damage from the head, but I find their head movement their head movement is too erratic and too quick, and they're too tall to really like, it's not really worth the effort to go after the head, because you can feasibly kill both of them pretty well by just kind of hitting the body. It's so weird too, because FromSoft nailed this design aspect with the dragon fight in Dark Souls 3 Midir, where you're basically like headhunting the whole time, and the fight is designed that way. It's balanced around that, and it's really cool. But Lanciax and Fortisax kind of feel like a step back from that. I don't know if that was intentional because they didn't want to repeat the same dragon design twice, but Midir's design approach is way more interesting. I wish we were rewarded more for headhunting Lanciax and Fortisax. Like, these two would have been A tier if their head movement was less erratic and it was easier to to hit the head, and if that was basically the intended way to win, and the damage reduction on their bodies was way reduced, like with Midier. But the way it is now, you just kind of spend the whole fight underneath them, whacking at their legs. So even though everything else about them is really cool, that's what's keeping them from coming into A tier. Placidusax averts this issue and breaks into A tier with the fact that its body design doesn't really allow you any safety, and I find his attacks really cool and really interesting. Definitely the best dragon boss in the game. Really cool. I mean, it's a two-headed dragon. Can't really go wrong with that. The second phase really cranks up how tense everything is. Really cool. Solid A tier. Wow, I actually placed a lot more D tiers than I expected to. I had done this list before and I did not list that many. I feel like I filled out more of the B and C, but I guess I changed my mind on some of these. Kind of contemplating moving Magma Worm up to C, because I don't feel like it's as bad as some of the other stuff here. You know what? Yeah. Magma Worm does not deserve to be in the same tier as Tibia Mariner. No fucking way. No way it's in the same tier as Scaly Misbegotten. So, even though they're not the most compelling fights, I like the concepts enough. I like the second phase where at least some of them, they like light up their swords with their breath. That's kind of cool. So I feel like this is a good like final tier list. This is not a boss. This is not a boss. This is definitely not a boss. I don't know what this is. The Golem Archers were always generics when I found them. And then Miranda, I do not remember this fight, so I'm not ranking it. Sorry for losing my voice for a lot of the second half of this. If you have any questions, any thoughts on this, feel free to let me know if you agree or disagree.